Thanks so much for taking the time out of your evening to join me to talk about potentially joining us at Syracuse University and talking specifically about the psychology major. I'm really excited to give you some information and answer some questions, hopefully, for you this evening. And so I'm totally open to whatever you're interested in doing. So put your camera on, leave it off, whatever you prefer on that front. If you have questions throughout, feel free to use the chat feature. I'll try and keep an eye on that as we go. Or you can feel free to just unmute and start talking, or you can use the little reactions to raise your hand and I can call on you if you prefer. Whatever is easiest for you all is fine with me for this session. We are recording it, just if that's something you'd like to know. This is so that students who weren't able to attend could still get a copy of this and get the information if they weren't able to attend tonight. So it'll just be sent by our admissions team to specific people, not posted publicly or anything like that. All right. Looks like our waiting room settled down. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. What I prepared for us tonight was a pretty brief kind of overview of the major and the opportunities that are available at Syracuse regarding the psychology major and career preparation path. So I'll give you that presentation. Like I said, if you have questions, let me know. And then I'll leave time at the end to answer any other questions. If you have really idiosyncratic questions that are like just about you and your situation, you might want to email me those later instead of asking them here. My email address is in the chat. Yes, that's correct. It's lvmachia@syr.edu. So feel free to use that if you would like. All right, let's get started. I've lost my chat window now. Okay, got my chat back. We're all set. Okay. So let me tell you about psychology. Let me first introduce myself. Sorry, I should have started there perhaps. I'm Dr. Laura Machia. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Studies in the Psychology Department at Syracuse. I've been at Syracuse 10 years now. It's where I've spent my entire career. And stepping into this role of Director of Undergrad Studies, I did that about 3 years ago, maybe 4. And it's been just a joy to get to interact more closely with our undergraduates and think more deeply about the curriculum we have. So I'm happy to share with you today. All right, so this isn't true everywhere. Not everywhere has multiple degree options for undergraduates in psychology, but we do. So I want to spend a moment just telling you about our 2 degree options. We offer both a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, a BA, and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, the BS. They're pretty similar, but I'll go through the differences and you could think about whether one meets your particular needs better than the other. So the Bachelor of Arts degree has these components in terms of our curriculum. So these are the classes you might take if you're pursuing the BA. You would take an introductory psychology class, unless you have like AP credit or transfer credit for it. We then have a methods and statistics base. So this is methods is a class, methods in psychological research, where you learn how to write research papers and conduct really solid psychological research. And then statistics, which is how you learn to analyze the data that you've collected in a methods class. So that gives you a really strong foundation for the science component of psychology. We then have a content base. These are the 4 areas of our content base. So you would take a class on social psychology. Social psych covers things like stigma, bias, intergroup bias, close relationships, groups, attitudes, persuasion, things along that line. You would take a cognitive class. This studies things, you would learn about things like sensation and perception, why we see what we see, how we interpret the visual stimuli we see. Things like memory, decision-making, all would fall into that cognitive class. You would take a childhood psych class where you would study things like how do emotions develop in young children, typically and atypically, how do logic, morality, all that kind of stuff, how do we develop those by the time we're an adult? And then finally, an abnormal psych class this would be covering the psychopathology, so disorders that you would see in the DSM. So things like major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, that kind of thing. How they develop, how they're treated, what we know about them. So you take those 4 classes, and those aren't just like random. Those are 4 that they're huge cornerstones of psychology, but they also map onto the 4 PhD programs that we have in our department. So we offer 4 PhDs, 1 in social, 1 in cognitive, 1 in school psychology, and 1 in clinical psychology. And so the faculty who teach these classes are truly experts in these areas as well. And then after that, sorry, got ahead of myself, you would take electives and what we call an advanced elective. We think of the advanced elective as our capstone class. So it's like the last thing you kind of take. It has as a prerequisite one of the content-based classes as well as methods and statistics. So what you do in that kind of a class is really dive deep on something you're interested in. So let's say you took social psychology and you loved the unit on close relationships. Well, we offer a class called Close Relationships. So you could dive deeper into that topic with your advanced elective and do a research project related to that. We also offer those in all of the areas. So we have one called Using Robots to Understand the Mind, where the instructor programs robots, and throughout the semester, you learn how the robots are programmed to try and, get them to understand. Sorry, I'm letting people into the waiting room. I've lost my train of thought. So you understand how the robots are making decisions, which is kind of how we figure out how humans make decisions, right? We have a class on autism. We have a class on health psychology. We have a lot of different kind of deep dives that you get once you get to the elective and advanced elective stage. So that's the Bachelor of Arts. And then of course, on top of this, you take the liberal arts core that all SU students take. But we also offer, as I mentioned, a Bachelor of Science degree. You take the same classes, but on top of that, you also take a lecture lab sequence. So this is a class where you take a 3-credit lecture on a topic like, say, experimental methods in child psychology, and a lab, another 3-credit class where you do a research project from start to finish that connects to that lecture content. So in this case, on child psychology. You also would take a natural science lecture lab sequence. This is something offered. You pick between bio, chemistry, physics, and then 9 credits of natural science electives. So typically students, have an idea about which one of these meets their goals better. If you want to go on in psychology, they're both perfectly acceptable, great options. Neither one's stronger than the other. But if you really like natural sciences and you're going to take a ton of natural science courses anyway, maybe you're pre-med, so you'll have to take them to prepare for the MCAT to begin with. Maybe the BS is a better match for what you're already taking. If not, if the natural science classes aren't as exciting to you as the possibility of taking more humanities classes or other social science classes, then the BA is the appropriate degree for you. They're both great. They both get you where you want to go. We're happy to have the flexibility. So beyond just a psychology degree, Syracuse has kind of an interesting subset of majors. You might have seen these in your research about our programs. They're called integrated learning majors. So we call them ILMs. It took me a long time to realize ILM was actually an acronym for something. I thought we just somehow called ILMs because they're only ever called ILMs, but it stands for integrated learning major. And what this means is you can't just be a neuroscience major, but if you're a psychology major, you can add a neuroscience major as a complementary major to your psychology major. So you take a bunch of psychology classes and then a few additional neuroscience classes and graduate with a double major in psychology and neuroscience. You could do the same with forensic science, for example, where you take a lot of psychology classes and then some classes in other departments like chemistry, forensic science proper, or there's a few philosophy classes, for example, and create a forensic science major for yourself. So there's some interesting ways to kind of tailor your experience of what the psych major looks like. Are you a BA or a BS? Beyond that, do you add on one of these ILMs or not? And beyond the ILMs, of course, you can add on other majors, other minors, but these ones are designed to work with psychology, which is pretty cool. As you can see, because of the tailoring that's available and the kind of specialization you can do here, you might need some help kind of figuring out your path through it. It's not like every one of our students takes the same 10 classes. They all take a different combination depending on their goals, their interests, why they've declared psychology as a major. And so for that reason, we have a really strong advising team assigned to every student that we have in our major. At SU, you would have this, everybody that is one of our majors has these, a CAS advisor, so College of Arts and Science advisor. You'd have access to psychology drop-in advising, and you'd have access to faculty mentoring. These all do slightly different things for your path. CAS advising are the advisors who help you with the major requirements to make sure you've taken the right lecture lab, you've taken an advanced elective, you've taken the right courses. They can help you with academic planning. So they can help you figure out, oh, you want to go in IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology. Here's a good set of classes you might take. And here's a different major you might consider adding on. And here's how we can get those two majors to work together and give career guidance. The psych drop-in advising, this is in-house, so it's in our physical department. There are staff members just that work only with psychology majors. They do things like help you declare your major or minor if you don't come in declared. They look over the major requirements if you need help with that. They help you get into research labs. They help you with transfer credit if you wanted to take any classes elsewhere and transfer them in. They help with add and drop forms, and they help connect you to other things that Syracuse has, other psychology resources. So if you are kind of having trouble finding a faculty member with interests that match yours, they would know who to pair you up with and how to get you in contact with that person. So they're a good way to navigate the psych department. And then finally, you get assigned a faculty mentor. This is just any one of us faculty members. These people can help you discover professional interests. So maybe you've taken 3 classes, you love 2 of them, hated one of them. You're not sure what this means for you career-wise, what kind of psychologist you want to be, how you want to kind of go further with that. The faculty mentors would be a great starting point, to talk about what the field looks like and what options there are. They can answer questions about other majors that could be helpful to add on. Career options, graduate school, if you're interested in that for psychology, getting involved in research, etc. So very flexible major, lots of support to make sure you navigate it to its full potential. Psychology is also the biggest major at Syracuse. So this means we have the opportunity to provide just a ton of other ways to connect students. We have some clubs and organizations to, being a big major, it's great. We have so many resources and every time we throw an event, there's plenty of people who come, which is awesome. But, I also went to an undergraduate where psychology is one of the larger majors, and it's a little hard to kind of find your group of like truly passionate psychology majors among the many who have just added it as a second major or something. So we're really conscious of that here. And we want to make sure that those people who are passionate about psychology and want to go deep in psychology find each other and find opportunities to do more with psychology outside of the classroom. The psychology club is our primary way of doing that. This is a student organization, so it's run by students, but there is a faculty advisor who helps. And they put on whatever programming makes sense for them. It's up to the membership of the club to decide. They tend to do things like literally tonight, there is a session going on called Grad Schooled, where they've invited a faculty member to come and describe whether to go to grad school, kind of how to walk through the decision of should I go to grad school or not, and if I should, for what. That's session 1, that was last week. And then this week's session is how to nail the interview, how to apply really well, how to make sure you've applied to the right places, all that kind of logistics of how to get into grad school. They also do movie nights often, and then invite psychology faculty to come lead panels to talk about the movies that they just watched that are psychological in nature, but like popular, regular movies, but like talk about the psychological aspects of them. They do some community service events. There's always a big Walk for Autism research that they get involved with this time of year. So it's a great way to find the other like truly passionate psychology students and interact with them in a non-classroom setting. We also have a division of Psychi, which is the National Psychology Honor Society. We induct several people a year. I think it's somewhere in the range of 40 students a year get inducted into our Psychi. We always have a big banquet for them and get to acknowledge that they're a high achieving psychology student here, which is not an active, there's not like events or anything besides the induction, but it is a nice like community of resources. Another great way to take advantage of the fact that Syracuse is a heavily research intensive university and psychology is the biggest major, if you are a psychology major or a psychology interested person, is to take advantage of the research opportunities that we have. So because all of the faculty that work here have active research labs, it's quite common for our students to kind of hook up with faculty research and work on kind of legitimate cutting edge scientific projects with our faculty. There's lots of ways to get involved. We don't need to go through these in detail because it's not quite relevant to you yet, but I bring them up here just to tell you, we give lots of opportunities for you to find a way into a research lab. A lot of people just have a connection with a faculty member in a class, and that's how they get connected to do research with them. But we also every year have a research fair where all of us come out and talk about what research is on and put up posters and give out handouts and candy and all that. We do a poster session at the end of every year. This year's April 22nd, where the students who've been doing research all along present their work, the undergraduate students. And then Pride program is for students from underrepresented groups to get involved in a really intensive way in research. So I can show you a little bit. I have this website. How do I do this? I'm gonna change my share. Let's see. So here's what this website looks like. Yeah. So it shows you like the research labs we have going on here and the kinds of topics you can study. So you can study clinical health with a faculty member. So this means a faculty member is doing this research. They're funded by federal grants. They're collecting real data from real participants with real hypotheses, and you work side by side with them and their graduate students to do this work. And you can go through and see the kinds of labs you could potentially join. I'll take you to the best one, which is this one. Happens to be mine, but that doesn't mean it's not actually the best one. So here you can see how to get involved. If you want to be one of my research assistants, here's what my lab is all about. Here's what you would do if you worked in my lab. You'd you'd help me run my experiments, code data, help with other research related tasks, which are enumerated here. And then I have like an application you would fill out and send to me, and you could potentially be involved. It also tells you more about the research I'm doing, which would tell you more about the kind of faculty we have at Syracuse. And you could see if you want to take classes from people doing research on why people break up, for example, or any of these other topics you see here, ADHD, intergroup bias, decision-making, memory modeling, cognitive science, mind body is like a mindfulness type lab. So there's that resource. So let me go back to my other share. Yep, sorry. And I guess I can't get this in can I copy this right now? No, I'll try and get this in the chat after the presentation ends. But that's essentially all I wanted to share with you today is kind of some of the resources available and tell you a bit about the major. So I'll stop sharing now and answer any questions that you might have had as a result of that.